Ladies and gentlemen, the captain has turned on the fasten seatbelt sign. If you haven't already done so, please make sure the volume of this podcast is set perfectly to your listening enjoyment. Please take your seat, whether that's on the treadmill, car, sofa, or bed, and buckle in for the last trip. My name is Jamie Beebe, and I'll be your tour guide, recreating someone's last days in paradise. On behalf of myself and everyone behind the scenes, please enjoy the Last Trip podcast. And because nobody likes a long flight to get to where they want to be, let's prepare for takeoff. Matthew Mullaney was only 21 years old when he left Massachusetts to study abroad in Italy. Just a few weeks after his arrival, on January 31st, 2003, Matthew left an Irish pub and disappeared without a trace. His disappearance triggered an international search across Europe, with several unconfirmed sightings reported until around 2006. After that, the trail went cold. Many theories have emerged about what might have happened to Matthew, but as of today, he remains missing. His case continues to be one of the most mysterious disappearances involving Americans abroad. Florence, Italy, is a city of art, romance, and history. It's been a major center for culture and learning, influencing painters, sculptors, architects, and philosophers during the Renaissance. Leonardo da Vinci, Michelangelo, and Botticelli were all very active in this city and contributed to the legacy it is today. Today, millions of visitors from around the world visit each year, and tourism is a vital part of the economy and culture. I went there a couple years ago and was blown away by the absolute beauty and history of it all. I also enjoyed probably the best pizza of my life there, and I consider myself quite the pizza connoisseur. So take it from me, you will definitely enjoy the food. And a quick side note, Firenze is the Italian name of the city, and Florence is the English translation. So keep that in mind in case you come across an address that says Firenze and not Florence. As a city rich with art, you'll want to visit the Uffizi Gallery, which is one of the most famous art museums globally. It houses works by Botticelli, Michelangelo, and Raphael. You can easily spend the whole day touring the vast collections. If you are planning to go to any museums while you're there, be sure to book your spot as far in advance as you can. You'll still probably have to wait in line. Keep in mind that Monday is the closing day of national museums. My favorite spot was the Florence Cathedral, with its iconic dome designed by Brunelleschi. And you can climb to the top of the dome for panoramic views of the city and get an amazing photo there for the gram. It does require a dress code, so your shoulders and knees should be covered, even for men. If it's warm out, bring a light scarf with you to cover up. For my shoppers out there, the Ponte Vecchio is a historic stone bridge lined with shops selling jewelry and art. It's an iconic landmark and the perfect spot for a photo op. It was originally built in Roman times, but the current structure was constructed in 1345. It was one of the few bridges in Florence to survive the bombings of World War II. During the medieval period, the Ponte Vecchio was a vital trade route that connected the two sides of the Arno River. It's not just a bridge, but more of a living piece of history that captures the essence of Florence. It stretches approximately 150 miles from its source near the mountains of Tuscany to the Ligurian Sea near Pisa. The river has played a crucial role in the city's history and development. It bisects the city, and its banks are lined with buildings and landmarks. But it also has a major history of flooding, including a catastrophic flood in 1966, which caused widespread damage and loss of life. It highlighted the dangers of a city built on the banks of such a river. The currents can be especially strong, sometimes making it dangerous for swimmers or anyone recreationally enjoying the river. But it is a very beautiful and important feature of the city. If you're traveling to Florence, be prepared that it is considered to be one of the more expensive cities in Italy, especially when compared to smaller towns or rural areas. but there's always a way to go without breaking the bank. There are a wide range of accommodations, from luxury hotels to budget hostels, and prices can vary significantly. High-end hotels in the historic center can cost thousands of dollars a night, while renting an apartment or staying in a guest house costs an average of $100 a night, with budget hostels coming in around $20 a night. Restaurants can be especially pricey, but there's always options like pizzerias and trattorias, where you can find more budget-friendly meals. Although I'd skimp on the accommodations before I skimped on the food in Italy. Florence has great public transportation, including buses and trains, but the city is also very walkable. It's a beautiful place full of art, history, culture, food, and romance, and a must-see while you're in the country. And the great thing is that it's pretty centrally located, so it's an ideal base for exploring nearby cities like Pisa, Siena, and Bologna. Matthew had only been in the city for a couple of weeks before he went missing, but he was already telling his parents how much he loved it there and how beautiful everything was. Let's get to know Matthew Mullaney and learn more about his mysterious disappearance. Matthew Mullaney was born on November 5, 1981, in Brockton, Massachusetts, to parents Terry and Michael Mullaney. A few years later, his sister Meg joined the family. They shared a close bond, living in the charming seacoast town of Scituate, Massachusetts. Matthew had a magnetic personality, known for his quick wit, great sense of humor, and the way he made everyone around him feel comfortable. Friends knew they could count on him, and he thrived on building connections with the people he met. He had a deep love for music, skating, and art, and his mother fondly remembered his gentle spirit, beautiful smile, and sense of humor. Warm, charismatic, and adventurous, Matthew was eager to explore the world and embrace life's possibilities. After high school graduation, Matthew left for Fairfield University in Connecticut, but it just wasn't working out for him. He pushed himself through for 2 years, until finally making the decision, along with his parents, that he needed to change his path. He turned back to his passion for music and art, and his dreams of one day becoming a painter. With his parents' encouragement, at the age of 21, Matthew mapped out a new course in life that gave him the opportunity to study abroad in Florence, Italy. He was excited to go overseas and had plans to visit friends in Amsterdam and family in Ireland. Being really proud of his Irish roots, he was especially excited to visit Ireland. His parents weren't concerned about him living overseas because he was responsible and thoughtful beyond his young age, and they knew he'd have more opportunities in Italy doing what he loved. He was accepted into the Angel Academy of Art in Florence. It's a private fine arts school that focuses on classical training in drawing and painting. The academy aims to preserve and continue the traditions of classical realism, which was prevalent in European art academies of the 19th century. The training can be rigorous, emphasizing careful observation, draftsmanship, and the study of anatomy, perspective, and light. Students begin with drawing exercises, including work from plaster casts and live models, before progressing to oil painting. The teaching methods involve close mentorship between instructors and students, with an emphasis on the student learning by observing and mimicking the master, similar to the way the artists were trained in the Renaissance and Baroque periods. The whole family was excited to see him go, but they had no idea it would be the last time they'd ever see him. Matthew arrived in Florence on January 11, 2003, for his first semester abroad, with school starting just 2 days later. He kept in touch with his family and friends back home frequently, telling his parents all about the new friends he was making and how much he loved his new city. He talked about the immense natural beauty around Florence and how happy he was there. He told his parents schoolwork was easy, also telling them there was a lot of criticism, but not much praise. Even so, he was still very upbeat and enjoying the experience overall. He was in a new city making lots of new friends, often meeting them at bars or going for pizza. Matthew had many plans to travel throughout Europe during his semester abroad, even planning to meet up with friends in Amsterdam that March, which he was especially looking forward to. It was one of the cities on his bucket list. On the afternoon of January 31st, Matthew sent an email to his parents, which he often did. He told them how much he loved being in Florence, that studying was very demanding, and every evening of that week, he stayed home to study and went to bed at 10 p.m. So that Friday night, he decided to unwind a bit and would meet up with friends. There was not the slightest hint of a problem or anything unusual in his email. He was living with a female roommate around his age who attended the same school in the Campo de Marte area. She later recounted her interactions with him that evening, saying, "He always told me he was enthusiastic about this school. Sometimes he went out for pizza with other American students like him. The day he disappeared, I met him at home at 9 p.m. He told me he was about to leave to go downtown. I haven't seen him since." He left their apartment shortly after that conversation and arrived at the Lion's Fountain Irish Pub, a popular bar in Florence that was particularly well known among international students, expats, and tourists. It's located in the historic center of the city near Piazza del Duomo. It's a lively pub that caters to a young, diverse crowd, serving classic Irish beers like Guinness and Kilkenny, along with a variety of international and Italian drinks. It's a friendly, sociable place where locals and travelers come together, and a great place to meet people from around the world while enjoying familiar comforts, like burgers and fries. Matthew arrived there alone, and it's not known if he had specific plans to meet up with any friends or just went to enjoy the atmosphere and meet new people. The bar staff said he chatted and socialized with different groups at the bar. His behavior was normal, and he didn't appear drunk. He left around 2:30 a.m., and it's unknown if he walked out with anyone else or left alone. That was the last confirmed sighting of Matthew Mullaney. He simply walked out of the bar and vanished into the night. He was only carrying his wallet, which contained his Massachusetts state driver's license and health insurance card. All of his other belongings, including his passport, were left behind at his apartment. By Monday, February 3rd, his roommate was worried because he still hadn't returned to their apartment and she hadn't heard from him. This was really unusual for Matthew, especially because he was responsible about school and didn't skip classes. She called his parents and alerted them that he hadn't returned to the apartment since he left Friday evening. Right away, Matthew's parents knew something was wrong, and they jumped into action. They called authorities in Italy as well as the U.S. and filed a missing persons report. His father flew to Florence with very little information, only that Matthew had vanished after leaving a bar. Authorities found no activity on any of Matthew's prepaid phone cards, credit cards, ATM cards, or bank accounts. Missing person posters went up and the media got involved. And with Matthew's picture posted throughout the area, unconfirmed sightings started coming in just days after he was last seen. The first was a taxi driver who couldn't remember the exact date, but sometime in early February, he said he drove a man resembling Matthew to Fiesole, Italy, which is a charming hilltop town located just a few kilometers northeast of Florence. On February 14th, a pizzeria waitress who worked near Matthew's residence in Campo de Marte said she saw a man who looked like Matthew stop by the shop to get pizzas, accompanied by another male and two females. After Matthew's father spoke with the waitress and showed her photos, he verified that he thought this person was likely his son. 3 days later, on February 17th, came another sighting. A man and woman were in the area of Anzola dell'Emilia in the city of Bologna, which is a quick train ride from Florence. The witness gave the following statement about the encounter. "My acquaintance screamed and said, 'Look, someone on the ground there looks dead.' He was all curled up. I went near him with her and called him a couple of times. After a while, he turned around, but he didn't answer, so I had doubts. I said, 'Italian,' and he replied, 'No, English.' My acquaintance, who can speak a little English, spoke to him. They offered him a cup of coffee, but the boy reportedly said he didn't drink it. He instead accepted a hot soup, which he consumed very quickly. They said he appeared to be in bad health, thin, and ragged with a beard, later telling them he was from Holland but only spoke English. His parents felt this sighting could be valid because Matthew disliked coffee, and the couple identified him from his photos. I personally question whether this sighting could have been Matthew because he had only been missing for a little over 2 weeks. I'm not sure that's enough time for him to be thin, ragged, and grow a beard. About 2 months later, on April 5th, came the next sighting. A Dutch national said they spoke to Matthew on a train from Dover, England to London. During this interaction, the witness said Matthew spoke of traveling to Dublin to get a job there. The witness later identified Matthew from a security tape, although I couldn't find whether that tape was ever released to the public or if his parents were able to view it. The next sighting was July 23rd, nearly 6 months after Matthew vanished. An Irish woman claimed to have sat next to Matthew on a ferry from Holyhead, Wales to Dublin. The woman told authorities that the man became agitated after it was announced the boat would be doing an immigration check. It wasn't until the woman got off the ferry that she noticed the missing person posters of Matthew and contacted the police. After reviewing photos and videos of Matthew, she confirmed that was the man she saw. It's unclear whether there was an immigration check on the ferry or if anyone was flagged by officials. But since he didn't have a passport, it would make sense he'd be worried about the check. On January 3rd, 2004, nearly a year after he went missing, there were 2 sightings of him in one day. 3 Scottish citizens spoke to a man resembling Matthew at a pub in Galway, Ireland, when he asked them for directions to a hostel. And then, about an hour and a half away, in the town of Westport, 2 witnesses said they were approached by an American man asking them to take his photo. They contacted police, and after reviewing photos of Matthew, they were convinced it was him. On April 26, 2004, a bartender at the Leinster Arms pub said she witnessed a man resembling Matthew come in with a couple of women. The Leinster Arms pub is located near Kensington Gardens and Hyde Park in London. The last known unconfirmed sighting of Matthew was on July 2, 2005, at Oscar Madison's pub in Kinsale, Ireland. Kinsale is a charming coastal town located in County Cork, known for its gorgeous harbor, and it's one of Ireland's most beloved tourist locations. An Irish couple believed they spent about 3 hours of an afternoon with Matthew at the pub. He introduced himself to them as Matt from Massachusetts. During their chat, he told them he was keeping a journal of his travels so he could later write a book, telling them how he had been traveling around Europe, staying in hostels, B&Bs, and guest houses. But the couple didn't report this sighting until late July 2006, after seeing a missing person photo of Matthew and realizing it was the same Matt from Massachusetts they had met. When they reached out to authorities to make the tip, they were 100% sure it was Matthew. This new tip, although coming in a year later, rekindled the search in 2006, and Matthew's parents put up a $75,000 reward through the U.S. Embassy in Dublin for any information leading to his return. Before disappearing, he often spoke about making his way to Ireland, and his family truly believed he was still alive and somehow living in the country. They thought a new reward could push for more sightings. Unfortunately, that was the last sighting that came. And in the almost 22 years since he went missing, his trail has gone completely cold. But Matthew's family has never given up trying to find him. They've traveled to Europe often, and his sister Meg even attended school in Dublin so she could continue the search, hoping he had made his way to the country and was living there off-grid. His family thinks and hopes he's still alive. But they've also had to face the realization that after all this time, he might not be. They've been in contact with the FBI for many years in their search, and have more recently been working on getting samples of their DNA distributed to as many European countries that have databases as possible to check against any John Does that may show up. Although with Matthew's large, unique tattoo, I think if they had found his body, he would have been identified. A lot of theories have been tossed around about what might have happened to Matthew. But with no confirmed clues and many unconfirmed sightings across Europe, his case continues to be one of the most mysterious disappearances among Americans abroad. Let's discuss a few of those theories after a message from our sponsors. Matthew's parents cling to the sightings of their son, and at least for many years, believed he was still alive. In March of 2003, Matthew's father said, "It is very strange behavior on his part. He has never done this, and we have no reason to understand a behavior of this type if he is alive and is still in this region. I try to be as realistic as possible, and I think he is alive. The reason why I think he is alive is that no body has ever been found." He also said, "All the authorities, especially the police, think that if something had happened to him, his body would have been found. We have had several reports from Mullaney and Florence. The people who saw him think it was him. Maybe he connected with a new group of friends who are helping him, or he is begging on the street. Everything is possible. We only know that so far he has not used his credit cards or his bank account." But if Matthew is alive, why hasn't he contacted anyone? Why did he walk away from his seemingly happy life? And why so close to the start of the school? And why wouldn't he bring his passport with him? If he is alive, I don't think he just willingly left and started a new life. That's really hard to do, especially for a 21-year-old man without any money or a passport, and to be gone all these years. I just don't see it. When adults willfully go missing, there's not much their families or authorities can do about it. If they are found, authorities can basically do a wellness check and then let them continue with their lives. But Matthew had no reason to leave his life behind, so I would cross this theory off the list. Another theory speculates that he may have been struggling with the onset of an extreme psychiatric or psychological condition. There are a few conditions that could push someone into a type of psychosis. Dissociative amnesia, where someone is unable to recall important personal information, like who they are, and it can be triggered by extreme stress, trauma, or some kind of psychological conflict. Dissociative fugue, which is a subtype of dissociative amnesia. And with this condition, a person suddenly loses their personal identity and may travel or wander away from their usual surroundings, often assuming a new identity. A traumatic brain injury like a fall, car accident, or sports injury that can result in memory loss and confusion about someone's identity. Schizophrenia, which can cause episodes of psychosis where a person may lose touch with reality, leading to confusion about their identity. Sometimes the use of certain hallucinogenic drugs or withdrawal from substances can lead to temporary memory loss. The problem is, nothing was out of the ordinary with Matthew. He seemed to be perfectly healthy and happy. There were no red flags, no extreme stress, and no trauma. I just don't think Matthew forgot who he was and has been wandering around Europe for the last 22 years. If that was the case, he would have been found by now. His missing person poster has saturated Europe. Someone would have tracked him down. I think Matthew suffered a tragic accident or was the victim of foul play. And possibly none of the unconfirmed sightings were of him. And police did rule out foul play, although I couldn't find their exact reason for this other than they had no evidence of it. It could be possible he met with someone at the pub that night and left with them, or met up with them as he was leaving and something happened. Maybe someone tried to rob him and he was murdered. Maybe it was a kidnapping gone wrong. Even the possibility of a serial killer or random act of violence. But if it was foul play, no one saw or heard anything, and his body has never been found. I'm leaning toward Matthew's disappearance being that of a tragic accident. I think it's possible Matthew died in the Arno River and somehow his body was never found. January at night in Florence is normally in the 30s, and that's really cold. The Arno River doesn't usually freeze completely, and in fact, the last time it did was in 1985. But it does freeze partially. If for some reason Matthew saw some ice on the Arno and decided to walk across it, there's a very good chance he could have fallen through and drowned in the freezing water. Or maybe he somehow fell into the river on his walk home. There are strong currents, especially during periods of heavy rain or flooding, that could drag a body away to never be found. Maybe Matthew was hit by a car while walking home in the dark that night. The person was worried about getting in trouble, so they took his body and hid it somewhere. Unfortunately, with no clues, no confirmed sightings, no body, no one coming forward, and no unconfirmed sightings in over a decade, we have no way of knowing what happened to Matthew. This is a cold case and such a mystery. Every few years, it comes back through the media, whether social media, a podcast, or a news story. But the outcome is the same every time. Matthew simply vanished into thin air, and no one that knows him has ever seen or heard from him again. But his family will never give up or stop looking for him. And I hope one day they do get the closure they need. Let's cover some travel tips and how to stay safe in Florence after a word from our sponsors. According to the United States Travel Advisory, Italy is at a level 2. Exercise increased caution due to terrorism. The overall crime rate throughout Italy is fairly low, and Florence is a very safe city to visit. The most common crimes include pickpocketing and scams. Be on guard when you're in busy areas. Petty theft happens most often in public transport hubs like train stations or near tourist spots or other areas where lots of people are gathering. Leave any valuables at home and consider wearing a crossbody bag or money belt. As a general safety tip, if a stranger approaches you to offer assistance with your luggage, give you directions, or ask for help, you should be wary of them. Some scammers will try to distract you so that someone can steal your things, which is why you always need to be aware of what's going on around you. Other scams include fake petitions or gold ring scams, where somebody will try selling you a gold ring and put it on you to convince you, and then you won't be able to take it off, forcing you to pay for it. At night, parks are best avoided, along with the alleys around the train station and some areas on the extreme outskirts of the city. The safest areas of the city include Duomo, which is close to many of Florence's most popular tourist spots, Campo di Marte, where Matthew was staying while he was there, and Santo Spirito. But more than just staying safe, it's good to understand the culture and customs whenever you travel. Italians really appreciate politeness, and it's customary to greet people with a buongiorno, or good morning, or buonasera, good evening, when entering shops or restaurants. When meeting up with friends, it's customary to greet each other with a kiss on both cheeks, starting on the left cheek. Dining etiquette is important because the food there is amazing. Dinner is typically later in the evening, and some restaurants may not even open for dinner until 7:30 or after. Keep your hands on the table, but not your elbows, during meals, and wait for everyone to be served before starting to eat. When you're at a restaurant, specify whether you want acqua naturale, or still water, or acqua frizzante, or sparkling water, because tap water may not automatically be offered. It's customary to have wine with meals. However, it's unusual to request bread with your pasta because it's considered redundant. Bread is more often seen as a side item for meat and cheese dishes. Tipping is appreciated but not mandatory. Leaving a small amount like 5 to 10% of the bill is normally customary. And I do love my coffee, especially a good latte. But things are a bit different in Italy. Florence is all about espresso. You usually drink it at a bar standing up, and it's considered a quick treat any time of the day. The word latte is the Italian word for milk. So if you order a latte in Italy, you'll get a glass of plain milk with no coffee. If you want coffee and milk together, you can order a caffè latte or macchiato coffee, or also a cappuccino. But keep in mind that one of the many unwritten and mysterious food rules of Italy is that cappuccino is only a morning drink. The legal drinking age in the country is 18, and drinking in public is generally tolerated. But avoid excessive drinking in public areas because this will attract unwanted attention and it's rude. Also, it's generally frowned upon to sit on the steps of public buildings, churches, or monuments. It's considered disrespectful and, in some cases, may lead to fines. So, find a more appropriate place to sit. In some areas, feeding pigeons is prohibited due to health and cleanliness. You can get fined for violating this rule, especially in tourist hotspots. Many Italians observe quiet hours in residential areas, typically from 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. and after 10 p.m. So be mindful of any music or noise you might be making during those times. A lot of Italians are superstitious, so they avoid the number 17, which is considered unlucky. Some hotels and buildings even skip the 17th floor because of this. Also, olive oil is considered precious in Italy, and spilling it is seen as bad luck. If olive oil is spilled, it's customary to put a little salt on it to neutralize the bad luck. But superstitions and bad luck aside, Florence is an amazing city to visit and extremely safe for solo travelers, families, and couples. Always make sure that no matter where you're traveling, you inform someone about your plans before going anywhere. Tell someone reliable where you're going, what you'll be doing, and when to expect you back. And my number one tip to staying alive on vacation is to pay attention to your gut. If something doesn't feel right, it isn't. Matthew Mullaney was last seen at approximately 2:30 a.m. on January 31st, 2003, standing outside the door of the Lion's Fountain Irish pub in Florence, Italy. He had been there for several weeks studying at the Angel Academy of Art. There have been no confirmed sightings of him since that night. At the time of his disappearance, he was 21 years old, 5 feet 10 inches tall, and 175 pounds. He is white, with dark brown, thick wavy hair, and hazel eyes. His ears are pierced, although he doesn't always wear earrings. He has surgical scars on his left ankle, along with pins in his left ankle. He also has a large tattoo of a shamrock with flames coming off the top of it in the middle of his back. There's a mole on his left thigh. He could have grown a beard or mustache. He was wearing a navy blue sweatshirt with zip-up collar and a polo-type logo. He had on jeans and possibly tan suede wallaby ankle boots. Today, Matthew would be just shy of his 43rd birthday, and his family is continuing the search for him. If you have any information on the whereabouts of Matthew Allen Mullaney, you are encouraged to contact the FBI in Boston at 857-386-2000. Let's give Matthew's family the closure they deserve. And finally, remember to leave a review and rate this podcast 5 stars if you like the show, or hell, even if you don't. But either way, feel free to let me know what you think. Please follow The Last Trip on Instagram at The Last Trip Crime Pod, and subscribe on Patreon to support the show. You'll get extra research, videos, photos, and updates, and even learn more about my personal travels. That's patreon.com/thelasttrippodcast. I'm Jamie Beebe, bringing you your last trip and signing off until the next one. Thanks for listening.